Fumbling the bag. Let me go over to Urban Dictionary for the official definition. To miss out on a chance to make money or f something up in the process of getting money, causing you to not be able to get said money. We have probably all been in the position where we may have fumbled the bag, but nobody has fumbled the bag as bad as these guys. Even one who worked out an illegal NBA contract, all for it to come crashing down. Before I tell you about this illegal contract, which I had no clue even happened until researching for this video, we have to talk about Dennis Schroeder, who was offered a 4-year, $84 million contract in guaranteed money from the Los Angeles Lakers, but he turned it down. It was the middle of the season when the contract was offered to Dennis, and he wanted to bet on himself because he was searching for a contract worth over $100 million. However, for Dennis, he had an up and down season, and he mentioned that it was hard playing with both LeBron James and Anthony Davis, which were both superstars. Dennis entered free agency, and the best he could get was a 1-year, $5.9 million deal with the Boston Celtics, just a tad bit short from that 9-figure contract he was hoping for. Although Dennis lost out on just less than $80 million of guaranteed money, it is nowhere near as bad as Spencer Haywood, who lost out on over $1 billion because his agent couldn't figure out the math. I'll explain that part in a bit. It was 1973 when Spencer Haywood was negotiating a contract with an up-and-coming company at the time named Nike. Spencer grew up rough, to say the least, where he was born into slavery and had to start working in the cotton fields at the age of 4. Luckily, he found basketball, and it was putting himself in a position where he could change his family's future. Spencer was offered an endorsement deal with Nike, and he was given the decision for either 10% ownership of the company or $100,000. His agent decided to go with the $100,000 after failing to figure out a way to get his cut out of that 10% Nike ownership. Yeah, it's a lot easier to split things up when you're dealing with $100,000, but if we look at that deal, it would be worth over $8 billion today. And he went on to fire that agent, and it's also worth noting that this was 1973, so there's no way of knowing back then that Nike was going to become this big, massive company that it is today. He still was able to change basketball forever in many different ways, with one of the most notable being the 4-year rule, where players couldn't enter the NBA until 4 years after graduating high school. But after the Hayward vs. National Basketball Association, he ended up winning the case, and now players can enter the NBA after just 1 year removed from high school. If you thought losing out on Nike ownership was bad, then you're definitely going to want to hear about Bonzi Wells. He was a guard for the Sacramento Kings, and he was offered a 5-year, $38.5 million contract. However, he turned down the contract and went on to sign a 2-year, $5 million contract with the Houston Rockets. This took a toll on Bonzi, and he was absent from the team on several occasions for personal reasons. He also was pulled from practice for over a month by coach Jeff Van Gundy to work with the training staff on his conditioning, and he made him hop on the exercise bike quite a few times. Not only did he fumble the bag, but he continued to have problems with head coach Jeff Van Gundy until eventually going AWOL on a team road trip and leaving a voicemail to trainers saying that he feels like he is disrupting team chemistry. I would probably be disrupting team chemistry too if I lost out on that amount of money and then the coach was making me hop on the exercise bike instead of getting buckets. Now, before I reveal probably the worst bag fumble we have ever seen, also it happened to be illegal, we have to acknowledge Isaiah Thomas, the point guard who told the Boston Celtics they better bring out the Brinks truck to re-sign him or at least give him a max contract. Isaiah Thomas suffered a hip injury and he got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, where his production dropped after coming back from his hip injury and eventually ended up signing a deal for the league minimum with the Denver Nuggets. Although an injury may have screwed over Isaiah Thomas's career, Joe Smith had it way worse. Joe Smith came into the NBA at a very interesting time and was actually drafted number 1 overall with a class that included Hall of Famer Kevin Garnett. But that wasn't what makes things interesting. So the NBA had just changed the rules on contracts that rookies could get. So the year prior, Glenn Robinson was offered a 10-year, $60 million deal at the number 1 pick. The most that Joe Smith could be offered is a 3-year contract less than $9 million. Big difference. Despite not getting a huge rookie deal, Joe Smith played well enough to get offered an $80 million contract by the Golden State Warriors. He turned it down. The Warriors were sort of a mess at the time, and players were fighting with coaches, and the team wasn't very good, and Joe Smith was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, and he served as a bench player to finish the season. Going into free agency, Smith didn't have as much interest as he once did. However, there were teams willing to throw money at him, and the Minnesota Timberwolves offered him the most, and this would end up setting the franchise back for over a decade. So the Timberwolves wanted Joe Smith, but they couldn't afford him, so Smith's agent drew up a contract where he would play 3 years for dirt cheap, as far as the NBA is concerned, and then go over the salary cap and max his contract out with $86 million in the last year of the deal. This was an absolute disaster. It turned into a league-mandated voided contract, and the Timberwolves had to forfeit 3 first-round picks. Joe Smith went on to play for 12 teams, and he could have used that nice juicy year in his contract because after buying a $1 million+ estate in every city that he played, he sold each one for a loss when going to the next city. He lost half of all he had to a divorce, and now he has a net worth of negative $100,000. If you can secure yourself a bag, please don't fumble. If you enjoyed this video, click right here. This one's even better.